The sun had barely risen over the city skyline as Officer Derek Rowland slid into his patrol car. He adjusted his uniform and checked his appearance in the rearview mirror, a smirk crossing his face. 6 years on the force had taught him one thing: in this uniform, he had power. And Derek Rowland loved power. Another day, another opportunity to clean up the streets, he muttered to himself, though his idea of cleaning up had little to do with actual crime prevention. His fellow officers had noticed his particular enthusiasm when stopping certain citizens, but most looked the other way. Across town, Dr. Zara Washington was already on her third cup of coffee. At 35, she had become one of the most respected pediatric surgeons at City Memorial Hospital. Her steady hands had saved countless children, and her calm demeanor had comforted just as many worried parents. "I'll be home late tonight," Zara said, kissing her husband Marcus goodbye. That spinal surgery got moved up. Captain Marcus Washington nodded, straightening his tie. "I'm heading to that conference in Atlanta this afternoon. I'll call you when I land." They shared a quick embrace before Marcus headed out. Their relationship was solid, built on mutual respect and understanding of each other's demanding careers. Few at Zara's hospital knew she was married to the police captain of the city's central precinct, and that was how they both preferred it. Zara had built her reputation on her own merit. After Marcus left, Zara gathered her things. She needed to stop for a stronger coffee before heading to the hospital. The surgery today would be complicated, and she wanted her mind completely sharp. The small coffee shop on Maple Street was her favorite. The owner, Mrs. Chen, greeted her with a warm smile. "The usual, Dr. Washington?" "Yes, please, and maybe an extra shot of espresso today." While waiting, Zara checked her phone. The hospital had sent over the latest scans for her patient, 6-year-old Emily, whose spinal condition had worsened in recent weeks. Zara studied the images carefully, already planning her approach. Coffee in hand, Zara walked back to her car, a modest sedan she parked in a metered spot. She had fed the meter generously, knowing her coffee stop might take longer if she ran into colleagues. Unknown to Zara, Officer Rowland had turned onto Maple Street, his attention immediately drawn to her. Something about the well-dressed black woman made him narrow his eyes. Too fancy, too confident for his liking. He slowed his patrol car, watching as she reached her vehicle. "Let's see what we've got here," he said quietly, pulling up behind her car and flipping on his lights. Zara noticed the flashing lights in her side mirror and glanced at the meter. It showed 30 minutes remaining. Confused but calm, she waited as the officer approached. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked politely, her hands visible on the steering wheel just as Marcus had always advised everyone to do. Officer Rowland's face remained stern. "License and registration." "May I ask why I'm being stopped? My meter still has time on it." His expression hardened. "I didn't ask for questions. License and registration now." Zara took a deep breath. As a black woman, she was no stranger to unnecessary police interactions. Marcus had shared enough stories about pretextual stops for her to recognize one. Still, she reached slowly for her purse. "I'm just getting my wallet," she said clearly. Officer Rowland's hand moved to rest on his holster. "Hurry it up." As Zara handed over her documentation, she had no way of knowing this routine stop was about to spark a chain of events that would change not only her life, but the entire police department. And Officer Derek Rowland had no idea he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Officer Rowland examined Zara's license with exaggerated scrutiny, his eyes narrowing as he read her name. He ignored the prestigious hospital ID visible in her wallet. "Dr. Washington, that's what you call yourself?" His tone was mocking. "Yes, I'm a pediatric surgeon at City Memorial," Zara replied calmly. "Officer, my meter still has time. May I ask again why I've been stopped?" Rowland's face hardened. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." "Excuse me. Why would I need to?" "I said, step out of the vehicle. Now." His hand moved to rest on his holster again, a gesture not lost on Zara. With her heart beating faster, but her face betraying no fear, Zara carefully opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. Several passers-by slowed to watch the scene unfold. A young man across the street discreetly took out his phone and began recording. "Officer, I have surgery scheduled in an hour. Children are waiting for me. If there's a problem with my parking, Turn around and place your hands on the vehicle, Rowland interrupted, his voice rising. You don't decide what's important here. This is completely unnecessary, Zara protested, though she complied. Years of listening to Marcus's dinner table stories had taught her that arguing with certain officers only escalated situations. I've done nothing wrong. Officer Rowland stepped uncomfortably close. I'm tired of you people thinking you're above the law. Doctor, lawyer, whatever you claim to be. The young man recording moved closer, capturing Rowland's words clearly on video. My meter is paid. My vehicle is legally parked. What law have I broken? Zara's voice remained steady despite her rising anxiety. Disorderly conduct, for starters, Rowland snapped, pulling handcuffs from his belt. And now you're resisting arrest. Resisting? I'm standing exactly as you instructed. Zara couldn't hide her shock. Mrs. Chen from the coffee shop hurried out, coffee pot still in hand. Officer, this woman is a regular customer. She's a respected doctor. Ma'am, return to your business or you'll be next, Rowland threatened without even looking at her. As he roughly pulled Zara's arms behind her back, she winced at the unnecessary pressure. You're hurting me. This is completely inappropriate. The handcuffs clicked shut, tight enough to leave marks. Rowland's body camera captured everything, though he seemed unconcerned. You have the right to remain silent, he began reciting, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. Anything you say can and will be used against you. This is absurd, Zara said, trying to maintain her dignity as onlookers pulled out more phones. I want to speak to your supervising officer. Rowland laughed. Sure you do. Everyone wants special treatment. He guided her toward the patrol car with more force than necessary. As he opened the back door, Zara made one last attempt. My husband needs to know where I am. My patients are waiting. Please, just let me make one call. You'll get your call at the station. Maybe. Rowland pushed her head down as he forced her into the back seat. Before closing the door, he leaned in, his voice low. Next time, park somewhere else. As the patrol car pulled away, Zara caught sight of Mrs. Chen frantically writing something down, presumably her name and the officer's information. The young man who had been recording was showing his phone to others, their faces displaying outrage. Inside the patrol car, Zara took deep breaths to stay calm. She thought of Marcus, who would still be preparing for his flight to Atlanta, completely unaware of what was happening. She thought of little Emily, who would now have to wait even longer for her life-changing surgery. And Officer Rowland, smugly adjusting his rearview mirror to glance at his captive, had no idea that the woman in his backseat was married to his commanding officer, or that his career was about to come crashing down around him. The processing area of the police station buzzed with activity as Officer Rowland pushed Zara through the doors. Officers looked up from their desks, some raising eyebrows at the sight of a well-dressed woman in handcuffs. Got of disorderly conduct and resisting arrest, Rowland announced loudly, gripping Zara's arm tighter than necessary. Sergeant Diaz glanced up from her paperwork. What happened? This one thinks being a doctor means the rules don't apply to her, Rowland said, making air quotes around the word doctor. Zara remained composed despite her racing heart. I'd like to make my phone call, please. All in good time, Rowland said dismissively, beginning the booking process. Zara's fingerprints were taken, her belongings placed in a plastic bag, her hospital ID, credit cards, and the photo of Marcus tucked in her wallet were all sealed away. When they asked for her personal information, she provided it clearly, including her occupation. Pediatric surgeon? That's a new one, the booking officer commented with a slight smirk. You can verify with City Memorial Hospital, Zara replied calmly. I have a spinal surgery scheduled for this morning. There's a 6-year-old girl waiting for me. The booking officer's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. He glanced at Rowland, who shrugged dismissively. They'd all have somewhere important to be, Rowland said. Process her like anyone else. Officer Thompson, a younger cop who had been watching the scene, approached cautiously. Maybe we should call the hospital to confirm. If she is a surgeon, there might be a child. You questioning my arrest, Thompson? Rowland cut him off sharply. No, sir, just thinking about procedure. Thompson retreated, though he continued watching with concern. Zara was led to a holding cell where 3 other women were already waiting. As the door clanged shut behind her, the reality of her situation fully hit her. She had never been on this side of the law before. The surgical scrubs she wore under her white coat now felt like a cruel reminder of where she should be. One of the women, older with gray-streaked hair, looked at her sympathetically. "First time?" Zara nodded, taking a seat on the hard bench. "What'd they get you for, honey?" "Apparently, parking while black," Zara said quietly, "and being disorderly by asking why I was being arrested." The woman shook her head. "Let me guess. Roland?" Zara looked up in surprise. "Yes. You know him?" "Everyone in this neighborhood knows Roland. Man's got a quota or something. Especially likes bringing in people he thinks don't know their place." She extended her hand. "I'm Gloria, by the way." "Zara Washington," she replied, shaking Gloria's hand. The minutes ticked by, turning into hours. Zara repeatedly requested her phone call, only to be told, soon. Her thoughts turned to Emily, the little girl who had already been waiting months for her surgery. The parents who had taken time off work. The surgical team that would now be scrambling. At City Memorial Hospital, confusion reigned. Dr. Zara Washington had never missed a surgery. Never even been late. Calls to her cell phone went straight to voicemail. Her emergency contact, her husband, wasn't answering either. Back in the holding cell, Zara closed her eyes briefly. Marcus would be on his plane to Atlanta by now, unreachable for at least another hour. She thought about the irony. Her husband was a police captain in this very precinct, and here she sat, unjustly detained by one of his officers. Officer Thompson appeared at the cell door, his face troubled. "Dr. Washington, is that really who you are?" "Yes," Zara replied, standing up. "Please, I need to make my call. There's a child waiting for surgery." Thompson's eyes reflected genuine concern. "I'll see what I can do." He glanced over his shoulder nervously. "Roland's gone to lunch. Maybe now's our chance." As Thompson fumbled with his keys, Zara felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps someone in this station would finally listen. What she didn't know was that across town, Marcus Washington's flight had just been cancelled due to mechanical issues, and he was heading back to his office. Captain Marcus Washington drummed his fingers on his knee as the airline representative explained the flight delay. A mechanical issue meant his Atlanta conference would have to wait. After collecting his refund, he decided to head back to the precinct. He might as well get some paperwork done if he was stuck in town for another day. The Mayday traffic moved slowly, giving Marcus time to try calling Zara again. Strange that she wasn't answering. She always kept her phone nearby, especially on surgery days. The call went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's me. Flight got cancelled. Give me a call when you can. Hope the surgery is going well." Marcus pulled into his reserved parking spot at the station, nodding to the officers who greeted him with surprised looks. "Thought you were headed to Atlanta, Captain," said Sergeant Miller at the front desk. "Mechanical issues. We're scheduled for tomorrow." Marcus glanced around the busy precinct. "Anything interesting happen while I was gone?" "Just the usual. Rowland brought in a few people this morning. Nothing major." Marcus nodded absently, his mind already on the reports waiting on his desk. He had been trying to review officer conduct files lately, concerned about some patterns he noticed in arrest rates. As he settled into his office, his desk phone rang. The caller ID showed City Memorial Hospital. "Captain Washington speaking." "Captain, this is Dr. Chen from City Memorial." The voice sounded worried. "I'm trying to locate your wife. She didn't show up for a scheduled surgery this morning, and she's not answering her phone. This isn't like her at all." Marcus sat up straight, alarm bells ringing in his head. "She left for work this morning. She stopped for coffee on the way. We've been trying to reach her for hours. The patient has been waiting." "I'll find her," Marcus cut in, his police instincts kicking into high gear. "I'll call you back." He immediately tried Zara's cell again, then called their home phone. Nothing. Next, he called the coffee shop on Maple Street where she sometimes stopped. "Mrs. Chen's Coffee, how can I help?" A woman's voice answered. "This is Captain Washington. My wife Zara is a regular customer. Did she come in this morning?" "Oh, Captain." Mrs. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes, she was here. A police officer took her away. I tried to tell him she was a doctor, but he wouldn't listen. He handcuffed her right outside my shop. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What did this officer look like? Tall man, light hair. Name tag, said Roland. The pieces clicked into place. Officer Derek Roland. A transfer from another precinct who had already accumulated several civilian complaints in his short time here. Complaints Marcus had been meaning to review. Thank you, he said tersely, already on his feet and heading for the door. In the main area of the precinct, Marcus approached Sergeant Miller again. Where's Roland? Just left for patrol again. Why? Pull up this morning's arrest records. Now. The sergeant quickly typed on his computer, turning the screen toward Marcus. There, listed among the morning's arrests, Washington, Zara. Charges, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest. Processing officer, Roland Derek. Where is she? Marcus demanded, his voice low and controlled despite the rage building inside him. Holding cell B, I think. Marcus was already moving. Officer Thompson was just leading Zara out of the cell when the captain rounded the corner. Zara, Marcus called out, his professional demeanor momentarily slipping. Zara looked up, relief washing over her face. Marcus. Officer Thompson froze, looking between them in confusion. Captain, you know her? She's my wife, Marcus said quietly, his eyes taking in Zara's disheveled appearance and the marks on her wrists from handcuffs that had been too tight. Thompson's face went pale. Sir, I was just trying to help. Rowland brought her in. I didn't know. Get those cuffs off her now, Marcus ordered, his voice like steel. Then pull Roland's body camera footage from this morning. I want it on my desk in 5 minutes. As Thompson fumbled with the handcuff keys, other officers had stopped to stare, the whispers already starting to circulate through the precinct. Captain Washington's wife had been arrested by one of their own. And from the look on the captain's face, Officer Roland's career was about to come to an abrupt end. The precinct fell silent as Captain Washington walked with Zara toward his office, his hand gently supporting her elbow. The whispers followed them, officers exchanging shocked glances as the truth spread through the station. Get me her personal items. Now, Marcus ordered, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made everyone move faster. Inside his office, Marcus closed the door and finally allowed his professional mask to drop. Are you hurt? Did he harm you? His eyes searched her face, noting the marks on her wrists. I'm fine, Zara said, though her voice wavered slightly. But Marcus, there's a child waiting for surgery. Emily Johnson, I need to call a hospital immediately. Marcus handed her his phone. While Zara called her surgical team, he reviewed the arrest report on his computer. His jaw tightened as he read Roland's account. A completely fabricated story about Zara being verbally abusive and physically resistant. There was a knock at the door. Sergeant Miller entered with Zara's belongings and a USB drive. The body camera footage, sir, he said, placing both items on the desk. His eyes darted nervously to Zara, who was still on the phone arranging for another surgeon to take her place. Captain, I had no idea, if I'd known. Thank you, Miller. Marcus cut him off. Please send Lieutenant Rivera to my office and locate Officer Roland. Tell him to return to the station immediately. As Miller left, Zara ended her call. Dr. Chen will perform the surgery. Emily will be fine, but they've had to reschedule several other procedures. She rubbed her wrists, wincing slightly. Marcus, that officer, Roland, the way he spoke to me. Marcus nodded grimly. I need to follow protocol here, Zara. As much as I want to handle this personally, I can't. There are procedures. I understand. Zara knew how important it was that this be handled properly. Any hint of favoritism or inappropriate intervention would only undermine justice. Lieutenant Rivera, the head of internal affairs, entered without knocking. Captain, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry, Dr. Washington. I'm recusing myself from this investigation, Marcus said firmly. But I want everything by the book. This needs to be airtight. Rivera nodded. I'll handle it personally. Marcus inserted the USB drive into his computer. The three of them watched in silence as Officer Roland's body camera footage played on the screen. The evidence was damning. Roland's unprovoked hostility, his dismissal of Zara's valid explanation, the unnecessary force, and most disturbing, the clear racial comments he made throughout the encounter. "There's more," Rivera said, her face grim. "We've had complaints about Roland before. 3 in the last month alone, all from minority citizens claiming harassment." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. "Those complaints were in my review pile. I should have." "This isn't your fault," Zara interrupted, placing her hand on his. "The system failed, not you." A knock at the door interrupted them. Officer Thompson stood there nervously. "Captain, Officer Roland just returned. And sir, there's something else you should see." He handed Marcus his phone. "This video is all over social media already. Someone recorded the arrest from across the street." The cell phone footage showed Roland's conduct from another angle, confirming everything on the body camera and more. The comments section was filled with outrage, with several people identifying Zara as a respected surgeon and demanding accountability. Marcus handed the phone back. "Lieutenant Rivera, place Officer Roland on immediate administrative leave. Confiscate his badge and weapon pending a full investigation." Rivera nodded and left quickly. Marcus turned to Zara. "This is going to get complicated. The media will be all over it." "Good," Zara said firmly. "Maybe this time, something will actually change." Outside the office, they could hear Rivera's voice as she intercepted Roland in the main area. "Officer Roland, I need your badge and your gun. Now." The internal affairs investigation into Officer Roland moved with unusual speed. Lieutenant Rivera worked methodically, gathering evidence that painted a disturbing picture of a rogue officer who had been hiding in plain sight. 3 days after Zara's arrest, Rivera spread dozens of files across the conference room table. Captain Washington sat at one end, his face grim as he reviewed the evidence. Though recused from direct involvement, he needed to be briefed as precinct commander. "It's worse than we thought," Rivera said, pointing to the arrest statistics. "In the 8 months since Roland transferred here, he's arrested 47 people. 42 were racial minorities. And look at this, 38 of those cases were dismissed due to lack of evidence or improper procedure." Marcus shook his head in disgust. "How did we miss this pattern?" The cases were spread across different courtrooms, different prosecutors. Nobody was connecting the dots. Rivera pulled out another folder. "Until now." The folder contained statements from 15 different citizens who had come forward after seeing Zara's story on the news. Each described similar encounters with Roland: pretextual stops, excessive force, racist comments, and bogus charges that were later dropped. "Gloria Mitchell," Marcus read from one statement. "She was in the holding cell with Zara." "Yes, she's been arrested by Roland 3 times in the past year. All charges dismissed, but she had to pay bail each time, miss work." Rivera's voice trailed off. "She's a 62-year-old grandmother who works at the library." The door opened, and the precinct's legal advisor entered. "We have a problem. Roland's previous precinct just sent over his file. There were complaints there too, but they were buried. His captain gave him a positive recommendation to transfer here." Marcus stood up, anger flashing in his eyes. "They passed their problem to us, and we did the same thing. Ignored the signs until it was too late." "Not too late," Rivera said firmly. "We have him now." As if on cue, the door opened again. An officer leaned in. "Lieutenant, we finished reviewing all of Roland's body camera footage from the past 3 months. You need to see this." The team moved to a computer where a technician had compiled clips from dozens of arrests. The pattern was unmistakable. Roland consistently used different language and tactics depending on the race of the person he was stopping. With white citizens, he was professional, often letting them off with warnings. With minorities, particularly black citizens, his tone became aggressive, his excuses for arrests flimsy at best. "He knew exactly what he was doing," the technician said. "He even turned off his camera sometimes, but forgot that the system records when it's manually deactivated." The most damning evidence came from a clip recorded just a week before Zara's arrest. Roland was talking to another officer in what he thought was a private moment. "These people need to learn their place," Roland's voice came clearly through the speakers. "I don't care if they're doctors or lawyers or whatever they claim. A badge is all the authority I need to put them back in line." The room fell silent as the clip ended. "We have enough for criminal charges," the legal advisor said quietly. "Civil rights violations, false imprisonment, filing false reports, misconduct under color of authority. Do it, Marcus ordered. By the book, but do it now. Outside the precinct, media vans had been parked for days. The story had gone national, respected surgeon wrongfully arrested by racist cop. But now it was evolving into something bigger. Reporters had begun digging into Roland's history, uncovering similar patterns at his previous jobs. Zara, who had returned to work at the hospital, was being approached by other victims, medical professionals who had experienced similar treatment but had stayed silent, fearing no one would believe them against a police officer's word. What had started as one wrongful arrest was quickly becoming a landmark case that would shine a spotlight on systematic problems within law enforcement that could no longer be ignored. The courthouse was packed on the morning of Officer Derek Rowland's hearing. Journalists filled the press section, their cameras ready to capture every moment of what had become a nationally followed case. In the front row sat Dr. Zara Washington, composed and dignified in a simple navy suit, her husband Captain Marcus Washington beside her. Roland entered with his attorney, a sharp-looking woman whose confident stride suggested she was used to defending difficult cases. Roland himself looked smaller somehow, his uniform replaced by a conservative gray suit that seemed to hang loosely on his frame. The swagger that had defined him on patrol was noticeably absent. All rise. The bailiff called as Judge Elena Martinez entered the courtroom. The formal charges against Roland were read aloud: civil rights violations, filing false police reports, unlawful detention, and official misconduct. The evidence phase had been completed over several days of hearings, and today would bring final arguments and the judge's decision on whether the case would proceed to a full criminal trial. The defense may present its closing statement, Judge Martinez instructed. Roland's attorney approached the bench with practiced confidence. Your Honor, Officer Roland has served as a police officer for 8 years. His record shows a dedicated public servant committed to maintaining order. The incident with Dr. Washington was unfortunate, but it was a misunderstanding, not a crime. She gestured toward Roland. My client believed he was following proper procedure. In high-stress situations, officers must make split-second decisions. We asked the court to consider the difficult nature of police work and dismiss these charges. The prosecutor, a veteran district attorney named James Chen, rose next. He moved deliberately to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, this was not one unfortunate incident or a split-second decision. The evidence shows a clear pattern of targeted harassment against minority citizens. Chen held up a thick folder. 47 arrests in 8 months. 42 of those arrests targeting minorities. 38 cases dismissed for lack of evidence. Chen walked closer to the defense table, his voice rising with controlled intensity. Officer Roland's own body camera footage reveals his prejudice. His own words, captured when he thought no one was listening, expose his true motives. The prosecutor played a short audio clip that echoed through the silent courtroom, Roland's voice saying, "These people need to learn their place." Your Honor, Chen continued, the evidence isn't just compelling, it's overwhelming. Officer Roland used his badge not to protect and serve, but to intimidate and control those he deemed beneath him. If this isn't a violation of the public trust, then nothing is. Judge Martinez listened intently, occasionally making notes. When both attorneys had finished, she spoke directly to Roland. Officer Roland, please rise. Roland stood, his face pale but defiant. I have reviewed all evidence in this case thoroughly, Judge Martinez began. The pattern of behavior is clear and disturbing. This court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with all charges against you. Additionally, I am denying bail based on witness testimony suggesting you have made threatening comments about Dr. Washington and others who have come forward. A murmur ran through the courtroom. You will be remanded to custody pending trial, the judge continued. And Officer Roland, I feel compelled to add that in my 20 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a flagrant abuse of power by someone sworn to uphold the law. As the bailiff approached to take Roland into custody, his composure finally broke. This is ridiculous. You're taking her word over mine because of who she's married to. No, Mr. Roland, Judge Martinez replied calmly. I'm taking the evidence over your word. That evidence would be compelling regardless of who Dr. Washington is married to. As Roland was led away, Zara reached for Marcus's hand. The former officer's eyes locked with hers briefly, still filled with defiance, but now tinged with the realization that his actions had finally caught up with him. Outside the courthouse, Gloria Mitchell waited with several other victims of Rowland's abuse of power. When Zara emerged, Gloria embraced her tightly. "Thank you," the older woman whispered, "for being the one he couldn't silence." 6 months after Officer Derek Rowland's arrest, the community gathered in the City Hall's main conference room. The space was filled beyond capacity, with people standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. At the front of the room, behind a table draped with a blue cloth, sat Police Commissioner Garcia, Mayor Wilson, Captain Marcus Washington, and Dr. Zara Washington. The verdict in Rowland's case had come 3 weeks earlier, guilty on all counts. The judge had sentenced him to 7 years in prison, making it clear that his abuse of power deserved significant punishment. The courtroom had been silent as Rowland was led away, his police career and freedom both forfeited to his prejudice. But today wasn't about Rowland. It was about what came next. "Thank you all for coming," Commissioner Garcia began, his voice carrying through the sound system. "Today marks a new chapter for our police department and our community. The Rowland case exposed failures that cannot be ignored and must never be repeated." He turned to Captain Washington. "I want to thank Captain Washington for his courage in confronting these issues, even when they appeared in his own precinct." Marcus nodded solemnly. The past months have been challenging professionally. Some officers had privately questioned his objectivity, suggesting he'd overreacted because the victim was his wife. But the evidence had silenced most critics. "Today, we're announcing several significant changes," the commissioner continued. "First, effective immediately, all officers will undergo expanded bias training, not as a one-time event but as ongoing education." The mayor stepped forward. "Second, we're establishing a civilian review board with real authority to investigate complaints against officers. No more internal investigations that go nowhere." A ripple of approval moved through the crowd. Many had been demanding such a board for years. "Third," Marcus added, standing to address the room, "we're implementing a new body camera policy. Cameras will be checked daily, and turning them off during any civilian interaction will be grounds for immediate suspension." Zara watched her husband with pride. Since her arrest, both of their lives had changed dramatically. Marcus had been promoted to lead the department's new integrity division, while Zara had reduced her surgical schedule to make time for advocacy work. And finally, Zara said, taking her turn at the microphone, "We're announcing the creation of the Justice Reform Foundation, which will provide legal assistance to those who believe they've been victims of biased policing." The room erupted in applause. Gloria Mitchell, now the Foundation's first community liaison, wiped tears from her eyes. After the formal announcements, people approached Zara to share their stories. Some were former patients expressing support. Others were citizens with their own experiences of biased treatment. Zara listened to each one, knowing that her ordeal had opened a door that had been firmly shut for too long. "Dr. Washington," a young reporter asked, pushing through the crowd, "do you think what happened to you will make a real difference in how police treat minorities?" Zara considered the question carefully. "Change doesn't happen in a single moment," she replied. "What happened to me was terrible, but it was also something that happens to people without my connections every day. The difference is that now we're talking about it openly." As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus joined his wife. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," Zara said, surprising herself with how true it felt. "For the first time since that day, I think I really am." They walked together through the city hall doors into the bright afternoon sunlight. Across the street, the police station stood as it always had, but inside, things were already different. New policies were being implemented. Officers were being held accountable. Complaints were being taken seriously. It wasn't perfect. Change never is. But as Zara and Marcus made their way through the crowd of supporters and media, they shared a quiet understanding that sometimes justice requires more than punishing one person. Sometimes it demands rebuilding an entire system. And sometimes that work begins with a single unjust arrest on an ordinary morning.